All right, so today we're going to talk about this one guy, Thales of Miletus. And what's wild is that his name pops up at the very beginning of two massive stories in human thought. I'm talking about the story of mathematics and the story of philosophy.
So that's the big question, right? How does one person become the father of both of these things? I mean, mathematics and philosophy, they can feel like they're worlds apart. One's all about the rock-solid logic of shapes and numbers, and the other, it's about asking the biggest, murkiest questions about life and reality. That's the puzzle we're going to piece together today. So here's our game plan. We're going to look at what made him such a revolutionary thinker. Then we'll dive into his two huge ideas, the geometry of proof and his philosophy of water. After that, we'll see how those two worlds actually connect. And finally, we'll wrap up with why his legacy is still so important.
Okay, let's set the scene. Our story kicks off in the ancient Greek city of Miletus. Think modern-day Turkey. Now, you gotta understand, this wasn't some sleepy little town. Miletus was basically the Silicon Valley of its day. It was a buzzing hub for trade, travel, and, most importantly, ideas. It was the perfect breeding ground for a totally new way of thinking.
And this is where you see just how huge a shift Thales represented. I mean, think about it. Before him, if you asked why there was an earthquake, the answer was probably something like, oh, Poseidon's having a bad day. But Thales, he and the thinkers that came after him started looking for answers inside nature itself. That might sound simple to us now, but back then, that was a radical, game-changing idea.
So who exactly was this guy? Well, Thales lived in Miletus, which, as we said, was this incredible crossroads. He was soaking up all this ancient knowledge from places like Egypt and Mesopotamia. And he wasn't some obscure academic. He was so respected for his wisdom that he was known as one of the 7 sages of Greece. People saw him as a figure of just profound insight.
All right, let's dig into that first pillar of his legacy, geometry. But listen, this isn't just about drawing triangles. Thales brought something completely new to the table, a tool that would literally change everything, the idea of a general proof. Okay, so this is the key difference right here. For centuries, people in Egypt and Babylon had been using geometry for practical stuff, building pyramids, measuring farmland. They had rules of thumb that worked, but Thales supposedly asked a totally different kind of question. Yeah, but can we prove this rule is true for every single triangle forever? That's the jump. That's the leap from handy rule to a universal logical proof.
And you know what? There is no better example of this than the theorem that's actually named after him. It's so simple, so elegant, but it perfectly captures the power of this new approach. Let's just walk through it real quick. It's super simple. Imagine a circle. Draw a line straight through the middle, that's your diameter. Now here's the cool part. Pick any point you want on the edge of that circle, anywhere at all. Now connect that point to the two ends of the diameter to make a triangle. And here's the kicker, the angle you just made at that point, it will always be a perfect 90-degree right angle, not just sometimes, every single time. That's the magic of a proof.
And what this shows us is something really profound. It proves that the universe isn't just a random mess. There are hidden rules, a kind of built-in necessity, even inside a simple shape like a circle. And our minds can actually discover it just by using reason.
Okay, so while Thales is busy finding this hidden order in the world of shapes, he's taking that exact same mindset and pointing it at the physical world all around him. And this gets us to the second pillar of his legacy. He starts asking one of the biggest questions you can possibly ask. What is all this stuff fundamentally made of?
This right here is his most famous philosophical statement. And let's be honest, at first glance, it sounds a little weird, right? Everything is made of water? But to really get what he was saying, we need to unpack one very important Greek word. And that word is archê. Now, this word doesn't just mean ingredient like in a recipe. It's so much deeper. It means the beginning, the origin, the fundamental ruling principle, the single underlying source that everything else comes from. He was hunting for the bedrock of reality itself.
So why water? Why did he land on that? Well, this wasn't just some wild guess. It was actually a pretty rational hypothesis for his time. Think about it. He saw that all life needs water to survive. He noticed that seeds and food are moist, and crucially, he observed that water can change its form. It can be a solid, a liquid, or gas. So if you're looking for one single thing that seems to be everywhere and can transform into everything else, water's a pretty brilliant candidate. And this is the real revolution here, the question itself. Thales changed the whole conversation. People went from asking, which god was the father of which other god, to asking, what is the world itself actually made of? That is the moment philosophy is born.
Okay, so now we have our two pillars, right? On one hand, the absolute certainty of a geometric proof. On the other, the search for a single natural principle behind everything. They seem like totally different projects. But now we can finally answer that question we started with. How on earth do these two worlds connect inside the mind of one guy? See, for Thales, they weren't different projects at all. They were two sides of the same coin. Both were powered by this one incredibly powerful belief that underneath all the chaos and confusion on the surface of the world, there's a hidden order, a rational structure, and that the human mind is capable of figuring it out. And this really nails the connection. The thinking goes something like this. If I can use pure reason to discover undeniable, hidden truths in something as simple as a triangle, then maybe, just maybe, I can use that same reason to understand the hidden order of the entire cosmos. For him, these weren't separate subjects in a course catalog. They were part of a single, unified quest to understand the world. And getting that unified vision is the whole key to understanding his legacy. So why are we still talking about a guy who lived 2,500 years ago? Because by connecting reason with nature, he didn't just give us a few facts. He created a whole new way to think, a path that, honestly, we're still walking down today. You can think of it like this. Thales was the spark. Later on, you get guys like Aristotle and Proclus who wrote down and built on his ideas. That leads directly to Euclid, who basically created the system of geometry that dominated Western thought for thousands of years. And that entire chain of reason, this idea of proof and natural explanation, well, that's the bedrock of modern science. In the end, Thales' real importance isn't whether he was right about everything. I mean, come on, the Earth isn't floating on a big body of water. But that completely misses the point. His true, lasting legacy is the incredibly bold and optimistic belief he introduced to the world that the universe isn't some chaotic, unknowable mystery. It's a puzzle, and we have the tools to solve it. And that really leaves us with one final thought, doesn't it? Thales started this grand quest to find the hidden order in shapes and in nature. And when you think about it, from the strangeness of the quantum world to the vastness of the cosmos, that's the very same quest we are still on today.